So I'm quite happy with the flip surfacing so far. We have very interesting splashes and also very nice waves creating towards the end of the animation. So I think it's now time to start creating our white water. And as I did with the flat tank, I will also use the shelf tools to create the white water this time. And my guess is that since we already created our white water from scratch, it will be much easier this time around. Although there is a few gotchas that I want to show you that you must be aware of. So first of all, what I'm going to do is hide the terrain geometry. And I am going to dive into the flat tank fluid. And currently my display flag is on the ocean evaluate. And there is one thing that you have to be aware of if you're going to use the interactive tool, and that is that the shelf tool will be expecting a live simulation. And let me show you what I'm talking about. I will move the playback to frame 1. Now I will jump out of this node, look for my ocean tools here on the shelf, and now let's try clicking on the whitewater tool. Now, if you take a look at the viewport, it's prompting you to select a fluid generating the white water. If I try to click here on the ocean surface, it won't allow me to create the white water. And this is what I meant when I said that the white water tool will be expecting a live simulation. So again, I will dive back into my flat tank fluid node. And this time I will put the display flag on this stop import. Now remember, this stop import node is fetching the flip simulation. So if you take a look here at the DOP network, it's looking for the DOP ocean. So let me click on this arrow to jump onto this node. And this is the simulation it's fetching. So let's try creating the white water again. I will click on the white water tool. Again, I will receive the prompt to select the fluid for generating the white water. And this time I will be able to click on the water surface. And notice how the tool is selecting the flat tank object inside the flip simulation. So again, in the viewport, press enter. And you will notice now something did happen. First of all, a node named whitewater sim was created. And inside we have our whitewater solver. Remember, we created this on chapter 3. And we also have our whitewater object. So let's dive out back into the object context. And let's take a look. Here we have 3 new nodes. One we already saw is a whitewater sim. Then we have a whitewater source. And finally we have the whitewater import, which is just fetching the result from the simulation for rendering. So let's order these nodes. First of all, the whitewater source, then the whitewater sim node, and finally the whitewater import that we shall render. So as usual, I'd like to change the color of my simulation nodes. And let's take a closer look at what's happening inside these nodes. So first of all, the whitewater. You can double click on this node. And here we have a very important merge node. So I'll change its color. And let's take a look at what this node is fetching. So it's looking for the compressed cache on the flat tank fluid. And if you don't remember which node is this, let me jump back out. Look for the flat tank fluid node. And here is my compressed cache. So the whitewater source will be using this cache to create the volumes that will be sourced into the whitewater solver. So now let's go back to our whitewater source node. Dive in. And notice we have here a null called volumes out. Here we will have our surface and our velocity volumes. And below the merge node, we have our whitewater source. Now for this exercise, I will leave most of these parameters on the defaults. So we will be using curvature to emit whitewater. We will also use the acceleration of the particles, the vorticity of the particles, and extra sources we won't need. But I do want to show you here under volumes. I didn't speak about this on the previous chapter, but this is very important. This will be the resolution of the volumes that will be created to source the particles. And when you're using the whitewater tool, this will be linked to the flip simulation particle separation. Now below the whitewater source, we have a file cache node. You can optionally save the source volume before sending this into the simulation. And I may do this later on, but for now, let's just see the result of the defaults and let's dive into our solver. So go back to the object context, dive into the whitewater simulation, select your whitewater solver node, and let's take a look first of all at the limits. If you click here on the limits tab, as you might imagine, this is also being linked to the domain of the flip simulation as well as the limit center. So nothing to worry about here really. The most important thing that you will need to check is under the emission, the whitewater scale. So for now, let's just use the default. What I normally end up doing is increasing the resolution for my final simulation. But again, since this is a tutorial, I want these calculations to be fast. So for now, let me increase this value. I'll go with 0.05 for now. And let's press play. Okay, so we can see something happening here. Let me take a look at the perspective view. So we have our repellents. So remember, by default, the repellents are on. We also have some white water being emitted. Remember, here we have some splashing, so it's most probably due to the velocity of the particles. But overall, we don't really want the white water to be present until the building splashes into the water. So we might be increasing the start frame overall before we commit to our first test. So let's do that now. I will dive out of the simulation, select my DOP network, and look for the start frame. I know that the rigid bodies won't be impacting the water until frame 145. So let's change this. And one more thing I'm going to do is I'm going to display my cached particles from the flip simulation. I don't want this simulation to be executed since we already cached these files. So I will click on the surface preview node just to be able to display this on the viewports. We can go back. And now let's take care of our whitewater simulation. So let's see a few frames. Let's press play. I may also want to display the geometry of the building just to see where we're having the contact with the water. So I might as well do that now. So as expected, as soon as we have the concrete hitting the water, we will start to have some vorticity and also some speed on the particles, and this will generate our volume. Just as a refresher, let's take a look at our whitewater source. And here's our volume. Overall, I think this is going to work well. So again, let's go back into our whitewater sim and let's display the rest of the objects as a ghost just to have an idea of what's going on. And let's play a few more frames.